future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Online dating. I met this girl online. Online dating. I met this girl online. Clicked and fell into this date from hell.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Larry Yates Is Show. We are so excited that you're here with us today in this week after Thanksgiving. And I know that everyone is getting ready for shopping and preparing for the holidays as they come up. And some of us are still in the gloom and doom of post-election. But you're at the Larry Yates Is Show today, and Larry is not with us today. He sends his greetings. He's a phenomenal host that is on the road a lot. This is Reverend Carolyn Wilkins. I have the honor of being with you today for this wonderful program. And we're going to do some time and attention to Standing Rock. I know that most of you are familiar with what's going on in Standing Rock. And on Sunday, we had the opportunity to celebrate a stay and a decision by the Army Corps of Engineers. But at the same time, there's more work to be done. So if you're not familiar with Standing Rock, stay tuned. We're going to give you more information about it. If you are slightly familiar with Standing Rock, stay tuned because we're going to expand your knowledge of what you know. And if you know a lot, call in and you may serve in helping others to be elevated in what is an important historical time in our history. We have some wonderful guests here today, including the Reverend Doris Davis, who we have titled The Walking Mystic. And with her are her two amazing children. We first have Vivecka Davis.
Hi, how are you, everybody?
Who is an actor, activist, artist. And we also have Brian Davis with us.
Hello, everyone.
And they're going to each tell you a little bit more about who they are and what they're doing. But first, we're going to do what we do every week, which is to touch just a little bit on the political climate. I'm not going to spend as much time today because there's not a lot that we know about the president-elect. What is happening with Trump and his administration is not what he said he was going to do as an outsider. It appears to me that he's pulling in people who have been insiders. There are a couple of opportunities for people who have been outside, but they've also been heads of corporations and involved from a business standpoint in ways that have been financially impressive for them, but not necessarily with the people that have worked with them and around them. So I think I was a little surprised at Ben Carson being selected for Secretary of HUD. I think Ben Carson was surprised about his selection as Secretary of HUD. So there's more to come on that. It's clear to me that there's going to be a white male-dominated cabinet that does not necessarily reflect this wonderful country in which we live and will not reflect the economic experience and structure and of who we are as a nation. So I'm still with a wait and see, but be cautious, be protective, and be open-minded. Because whatever is going to happen, I believe we're all going to have to become more active in our local, county, state legislation to ensure that our rights are maintained, that the opportunities we have are maintained, and that some of the policies that we have for health, human rights, are continued. Because it appears to me that the administration is a ticking bomb of being able to, of wanting to take away some of the rights for human dignity, as well as just simple policies for women's health, as an example. So I'm making these statements on a personal basis. I do not reflect or represent any organization. So when you hear me right now, this is Carolyn Wilkins and my opinion as spoken at the Larry Yates' Is show. So don't send any letters to any group that I belong to, because they're not the ones in trouble. So I take all responsibility for whatever's going on. So with that said, I want to now reintroduce our guests and have them share a little bit about who they are, what they're doing here, and then we'll start with some questions about why I invited them. So Doris, let's start with you.
Okay.
So would you tell us, and each of you, Doris, Brian, and Vivecka, would you tell us how you got involved in Standing Rock?
You want brief answers, I know, but it actually does go back to when I was about 14 and I had a dream.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about that dream.
I flew to South America. And then when I was graduated from high school, I went to college, spent 2 years there, and then flew to South America and spent a year there. Mm-hmm. So the reason it got me involved in Standing Rock is that I got involved with indigenous people in South America.
Yes. And I know you have visited and been there many times. So in regard to the most recent discussions in Standing Rock, I know that you actually went from the UN in September.
From New York City,
from
yes.
New York City,
yes.
And wound up in Standing Rock
when
you hadn't even planned to be there.
I had not. I was commissioned, actually sent there, by a group of indigenous people from Central and South America who chose me to carry a staff for the year in this staff of office and authority and empowerment from their group to convoke and convene circles of women.
Okay.
And the staff really needed to go to Standing Rock. And that's how I got there.
The staff as in
The staff
a
as-
stick
as-
rather than a group of people.
As a stick, yes.
Okay.
The staff representing
prayed,
yes.
prayed up and
like an emblem,
yes,
representing the group from South and Central America, having handed it to me, felt that I would be a person who could establish circles of unity and harmony involving women. And so with that staff, I and my daughter, by the way, whom you will meet in a moment, went to Standing Rock. I didn't personally want to go.
Excellent. Thank you. So Vivecka, you just got the go-ahead on continuing the story.
The story is, you've met my mother, and she has gone from Reverend Doris Davis to who I call Walking Woman. And it has to do with the fact that we walked across America in 2011 during the 100th anniversary of International Women's Day. And at that time, we thought it was about healing our family. And in the last 5 years, we've become profoundly aware that it's about healing the entire human family.
Well, let me ask you, because you kind of just slipped in that you walked across
Yeah,
the
just slip that in. Yeah.
You just kind of threw that in there like it's something we all do every year. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, how what happened? Where did you start, and where did you
Firstly,
visit?
I was never supposed to go, just so you know. I was supposed to document my mother's vision when she got together with these group of women and said, we're going to walk, I don't know, across America, and we're going to do it in over 7 months, and we're going to gather momentum. This is about women's voices and doing this. And I said, okay, well, let's look at the logistics. How, and we knew that there was going to have to be ways of, like a support team. Do you have an RV? Do you do a thing? And so as we started to look at it, Doris and I got very involved in orchestrating it and engineering it. And by the time the walk came, really Doris and I were the only ones who went. Now, there were some other people that started off to go. It was a big pipe dream. They thought it was going to be all this stuff. But when it really came down to it, it was Doris and an RV named Lindy. And I drove the RV, and I did a lot of the walking. And the story evolved to something that really took hold of us, which was that we're both in service to the divine feminine. And we're here to bring back and the return of the divine feminine, which has a lot to do with what's happening now politically, which is how we wound up at the UN. One of the people that we had met at the end of that journey on 11/11, actually, we had become very in touch with the indigenous communities on whose land we were walking during this period. And several of these people along the way became profound friends, and we reunited with each other. Surprisingly, on 11/11, we were invited to come speak at a Star Knowledge Conference, which is about how indigenous people have prophecies, and they're highly accurate based on astronomy and calculations of timing. And one of those people, who's a friend, Mazatsin, is an elder in the Aztec knowledge, and he was invited to bring this staff that has a sacred circle of the sages, the grandmothers and grandfather sages of South America. And this staff, there's 2 staffs. One's a unity staff, and one's a women's prayer staff, a women's spiritual staff. And he said, we're coming to the UN. I've got all the grandparents coming. We've got to do something. And it turned into the moment where we brought LaDonna Brave Bull to the UN during the UN Open week, and got her and several other indigenous leaders their UN credentials to go be heard.
So you've added a lot of information.
I have.
So I'm not sure our listeners and viewers know exactly
What in
where
the world?
you are.
Right.
So I'm going to just
it apart,
we're going to pick it apart a little bit, but let us first introduce Brian. Brian, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. I'd say why I'm here is because I am part of a community that is bringing the message back from Standing Rock.
Okay.
About what do we take home? How do we relate to Standing Rock, and how do we live and hold the important questions that Standing Rock represents?
Okay.
Because it's about protecting the water. It's about honoring traditional ways, counsel, among other things. So I've been watching with a group of people what's happening at Standing Rock, and so as my mom and sister were there, it's been very much on my heart and mind as one of the audience members, like there might be out there who are looking at and asking themselves, what does this mean in my life to stand with Standing Rock?
Okay, so we're going to unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
I thank you for being a person here to actually stand from that place.
You're welcome.
Because I know people wonder, what can they do?
Indeed.
What is their role? Are they involved? And
Right.
because so often I've heard people say, well, I wasn't a part of the problem. So I wasn't there during slavery. I wasn't there during the time that they moved the natives from their land and put them on reservations. However, you're here now.
Yes.
And our indigenous people are still on reservations. And the treaties that were signed have not been honored. Right. So what people can do now, we'll go into this a little bit more, is to recognize that we're not keeping our word. that this
Right.
country, which has the highest ideals, which has an amazing Constitution and Bill of Rights, is not doing all that it needs to do to honor original documents and treaties that were made with indigenous people. So I'm going to go back to that in a moment. So what I'd like to ask is regarding Standing Rock, what happened this week was a miracle in many ways and a place of celebration and excitement. So for those who have not been right on top of this, the situation at Standing Rock is a situation of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is coming from the north and was supposed to go through northern North Dakota near Bismarck, but it was moved from that particular routing because the white people that lived in the area did not want the pipeline through their territory. So it was sent to the native lands. And the reason that the tribes are protesting, have protested, and have done so for months on end now, is because the waterway, which the piping, which is supposed to go above ground, was actually redesigned to go underground and underneath the water supply that not only is affecting the indigenous people of Standing Rock, but if there's a leak, if there's a problem, it will affect the water supply of 18 to 20 million people. So I think a lot of the news that we heard on this did not help people to understand that it's a bigger problem than the Standing Rock people. But what I also want to emphasize is over 300 tribes came together in Standing Rock for the first time in 100 years. This was so vital and important to them that they came together in unison. So let me ask you, Doris,
Yes, ma'am.
what did you see when you were there? You were actually in Standing Rock. And what did the elders say?
What we saw there were 3 camps. There were a lot of people. It was freezing that night when we got there. I was only there 2 days, but it was enough. I am a bit hypocritical because I stayed in a hotel. I have to be out front about that. But we had a place to stay in a tent. We couldn't find it that first night, so we stayed in a hotel. What did I see and what did the elders say? I sat with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard for an hour. She is the Rosa Parks of this movement. She is the woman who stood up and said, "This will not pass. This will not stand. This pipeline will not go through. My land is near here. Let's set up a camp. Let's resist." She is the woman who, the poster child, arguably, of this movement. I sat with her. Now, I consider her to be an elder of this movement. So your question was, what did she say?
What did the people say, and what are they saying about this challenge at Standing Rock? Because one of the things that I found is that when I look at the news, and I am someone who honors everyone. You know me, and I'm open to diversity. However, I see that we have a very biased news coverage. So that when I see news with white media giving it, I don't know how forked their tongue is in having their discussions, because we know everything gets narrowed down to a detail that may not have anything to do with the reality of what's going on. So I'd like to know from the mouths of the people who were actually there what they felt the most important thing was.
Everybody owns Standing Rock who's there in his own way. I spoke to people who felt that they started it, like LaDonna Allard, But I've also learned that 13-year-old girls feel they started it. So what I saw was that in some way, everyone who was there that I talked to felt he had a stake in it.
Oh, beautiful. So
And
they're convicted now. They have a
Yes.
sense of conviction.
Yes,
with
everyone
what they're doing.
was convicted
Yes.
that he was there, and it was growing because of him. There were 10,000 people, ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
and it started back in April.
Yes.
When we were there, it was October.
Mm-hmm.
The camp there were 3 camps, and they had all swollen. You can focus your question a little if you want to know anything more specific.
Well, Vivecka, you want to add
I was
something?
there. Yeah.
Quickly.
So
Uh-huh.
essentially, what this is about it is cold there, and this is the stand they've been waiting to take for 50 years or more. This is Sitting Bull's legacy, and he was the last resistor to say, "Hey, you're not honoring your treaties. I don't want to conform." And at a certain point, these very, very brave people were completely traumatized, but because of it, there's leadership that is emerging. And I said, well, what do we do? Is it about the pipeline? She said, well, it goes very deep because it's about all the prophecies. And there are many indigenous prophecies that talk about this black snake wanting to cross the river. And if
Yes.
it's successful, it will be a bad sign in the fork in the road. We will go down. But if we get conscious and we become aware of protecting the water and being in harmony with Mother Earth and getting back into this type of wisdom, that it will be sort of a spring of spiritual breakthrough on this planet. So what her ultimate vision is, LaDonna, is to have the spot where the sort of the stand happen become an international center for culture and reconciliation. And that excites me.
Well, thank you. I've had the opportunity to speak with a couple of people that have slightly different views of what's going on and what is happening and what their vision is. And what I am excited about is that there are many people with visions that can all coexist in what's happening now. So, for example, I've spoken with Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., who is part of the council. He has been with us here in Los Angeles, and his vision is one of healing and reconciliation. I've spoken with Daniel Sheehan, who has been the legal mind, the brilliant mind behind some of the litigation that has gone on there, because regardless of the vision and the prophecy, it has to be taken into today's world in how to deal with the corporations, with the legal situation, with our legislation, in how to reinterpret the visions into actionable work.
Right.
So by what they're doing with the legislation is to say, this is what we need you to stand up for. And what I've seen is, first of all, honor the treaties that have been there. Second of all, honor the sacred land, because these are burial grounds and sacred land for the ancestors. And I know everybody could understand that. If you have a burial ground, you do not want people digging that up, displacing graves and displacing sacred ornaments and other things that have gone with the graves. So that's a very important part that I think all of our listeners can understand is important to them. The other is to provide opportunities for the young people, for education. The ways that the indigenous have been abused, really, is to use their place in the world as a way of getting money within the state for state-funded programs. So, for example, and this is something I did not know that came through the discussions of Standing Rock, is that the young natives who are school age, they take them off the rolls of the regular school system and say that they put them in foster care, number one, so that's another income stream. And they also take them from the role of a regular student to a special needs student. And that means that the state, the county, gets different kind of funding to support them. So they're playing dominoes really with the lives of these young people and not supporting what they need from an educational standpoint, from a housing and other things, health. And we know that something has to happen with that. Because when you label somebody special needs, and they're not really special needs, that they have been labeled special needs because they come from a certain environment.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you label people something, then they level up or level down to the area of expectation. And we know that when the expectation is low, then the impact on the community is significant. So those are some of the things that I know I have seen in that. Doris, would you share with us again? You're going to be doing a presentation tomorrow, I know.
Yes, we
and
are.
What are 2 or 3 of the things that you're going to share in the presentation?
Well, let's see. Forgiveness,
Okay.
very big.
Yes.
And I understand that after the leveling off of the miracle that happened when the pipeline stopped, they did not get their permit, and that was a miracle. The thing that happened the next day, I believe it was, the military, son of General Wesley Clark, came in a meeting of several hundred, probably 500 people, before the elders of the Lakota Sioux, Standing Rock Sioux, and asked forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness is a big part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that there is eventually a national apology offered to the native peoples of this land.
Yes.
So that's one of the things we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But how you get to forgiveness, there are several other ways. Prayer is another thing that is huge part of this. The whole, and nonviolence. Let's just take those 3.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Those 3 elements I'm going to talk about tomorrow and present how
Okay,
important
excellent.
they were.
Wonderful. Well, those are things that we have focused on in our interfaith work
Yes.
in Culver City and Los Angeles and throughout the world, really. And so I know they're very powerful sources that Standing Rock can help to push out to the rest of the world. Brian, would you share from your perspective a little bit about how you took this information and who you think you can share it with?
Sure. Well, people are gathering together to look at this and understand it and ask themselves that important question: how do I stand with this? And one of the ways that we can do this, and there's some documents that have come from the leadership at Standing Rock that actually outline this as well, is to look at this, the colonial mind. Okay, look at how this impacts all of us.
I think the colonial mind brought in Trump.
Right.
That's the easiest way to really say it. So
Yeah. So
and it's active. It's active.
right. So and it affects all of us, and because this is a native-led protection action, which is different than a protest.
Yes.
Very important to distinguish. They're there for the water on behalf of all of us.
Yes.
And that's something that we can all take back in our lives, is that they're talking about that water is life.
Yes.
Water is sacred, and water is everywhere with all people.
With all people, yes.
It's right here in our own backyard, in our own city, in our own county, like you said, in our state. These are the questions that we can be looking at today here, along with this whole complex of issues that get created when you have the power over dynamic of a colonial history and legacy, and the native people have borne that the oppression, right? So
Yes.
so there are so many ways. That's just the beginning question. What does it mean? What is colonial mind? That's an important question to just sit with and
Yes.
learn about.
Well, I think one of the things I'd like to add, I appreciate that perspective. The three things that Doris mentioned, I want to add honor and dignity, because that is an area that I feel that this country is lacking in with so many people. The discussion these days about immigration is a discussion that does not look at the people who are here with dignity and respect.
Right.
It has put children into fear that their parents will be taken away. It's put people who've lived here for years into fear that they will be asked to leave. But honor and dignity, I believe, is the way, part of the core of our Native American peoples, and really part of my family. I have Native blood through me. And what I know is so important is to honor 7 generations ahead, 7 generations behind. And the discussions that we have and the decisions that we make, whether it's through our Senate and Congress, is so seldom based on looking forward. And something that Doris sent me yesterday, which I think is so beautiful, is that we are here to honor the children and to protect the land for the children who are coming. And so I think there's something so important with what we're doing. Vivecka, did you have something to add?
I did before, but then I got caught up in what you were talking about.
It was so beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
It's about dignity. It's about respect,
Yes.
right? And if we give people no path to dignity,
Yes.
if you paint them into a corner and then polarize the whole thing and only give them war as a reaction, right? Ultimately, we're looking at how can we respond, right? It's a completely different place to come from, but you need to come from, you're looking to each other for cues, like, are we okay? Is this going to be all right? And on a spiritual level, when you're talking about vision, like if you're looking at it smallly when we're doing our governance, as opposed to the longer,
Yes.
the bigger picture,
Picture, yes.
right, the long count, we have the opportunity to do something historical in the way that we pay attention and we correct some things that maybe weren't proper, and we're far enough away from them where it doesn't have to be a shaming. And I think that that's what you're, in the dignity department.
Yes, it all goes together. That
Right.
When we do not treat people with dignity, then their reaction is question, doubt, fear, and shame.
How can they respond with dignity?
And
It's
and they
very
can't.
difficult.
And what this country has done, I love this country, but what they have done is not only, you mentioned that with the indigenous people that they've been put into shame, but more importantly, they have been given drugs, they've been given liquor, they've been given things that minimize their ability to be a part of the community by being on a reservation and then having these extra curricular things to do that don't enhance their respect. And then they lose respect within their own community.
The key, I think, is about leadership, right? You cannot lead a movement from without. That's the colonial way. Like, I'm going to fix them, right? So
Yes.
over how many generations it's taking, since Sitting Bull allowed his children to go to school, to be taken to go to school, only because he knew that they needed to learn how to read and
Yes.
write, because that's the new warfare.
Yes.
And in my path, the 47 years I've been on this planet, I've had many integrated situations where I know what it is to be the minority, and I also understand the privilege of being a young blonde woman and things that are possible for me that aren't. So I've always been an ambassador of other issues. And some of those issues is leadership really needs to develop from within. And seeing some of my friends, one of my friends, Stephen Newcomb, he is fighting all the way at the Supreme Court level to the Pope to reverse and change some of the wording that's in some of these original documents that make them not people. And an important thing about that I've learned on this journey is people aren't just human beings. There's the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the rock people. So when we start talking about the people,
it's all the people.
That's the main thing, is to stop looking at it like, well, I have a brother or a cousin or an uncle, we're blood, or we're homies, or those people, you know, the connections that are so stingy. Because the reality is you're absolutely connected to everyone on this planet.
We are sacredly connected through our very breath.
But the people are the bird people, the winged people. And so when we start to say, wow, the rocks are talking, the air and the water, right? So when we breathe our intention into, literally breathe out, the Dalai Lama said, your enemy is, at least he's feeding the plants. His exhale feeds the plants. So find something about the situation that you can be with and stand for the possibility that leadership is arising from, they say, no mud, no lotus. So that's what I see.
What I also see is that it's a new paradigm of leadership, because in the past we have seen leadership as one. And I think we can have leadership from many levels who are working together in collaboration. I miss certain leaders to have come behind Martin Luther King, because not only was he brilliant, an excellent spokesperson, an excellent orator, a renowned minister, but he was a strategist. He understood you had to partner with the people that you may not like or that may be doing things against you, but you also had to partner with the president. You saw him if you saw any of the movies or anything after, he was a strategist that made sure you were working this all through all levels. So there's leadership at all levels required. And before we come, the time is going by so quickly, but I wanted to read what is an email that we'd like you all to send as a continuing petition to our President Obama. And this is under the guise of We Did It, the Dakota DAPL denied. Dakota Access Pipeline. But pipeline company will fight back. Tell Obama, stay strong. So this is what we're sending. Thank you and stay strong. In a wonderful testament to the power of collective action, we are thrilled to share that President Obama has instructed the Army Corps of Engineers to deny the easement required to run the Dakota Access Pipeline past Standing Rock. More than 25,000 of you signed our petition calling on the president to take action, and it worked. Your voice and the voices of thousands of others helped tip the balance in favor of the water protectors, bravely standing to block the pipeline's passage through fragile sacred lands. The importance of this victory cannot be overstated, but we still have much work to do. In parentheses, bolded. But we still have much work to do. The pipeline construction company, Energy Transfer Partners, will fight back. They already have a lawsuit pending against the Army Corps of Engineers. Now we must keep the pressure on. We must thank President Obama for his action, but we must also demand that he not back down and that a thorough environmental review process be completed. This is just the beginning. Let us remain prayerful and prepared for the fight ahead. So this is an email that we'll make available for you to see. You can go to lakotalaw.org, LAKOTALAW.org is the website for you to find the email. And I'd like for us to go around and get some closing remarks. So I'll start with you, Vivecka. Would you do a brief
Yeah,
closing
I was hoping
comment?
to get one of the things I met when I went to Standing Rock was an amazing man named Jumping Buffalo, and he's the great-great-great-grandson of Sitting Bull, and he does the morning prayers, and he's quite a black sheep who's come back around to really help his people. And I was hoping that he might be able to call in and give us a prayer, but we can work that out at some other time. The most important thing for me is the possibility that we can bring leadership forward and embrace the emergence of a different type of a wisdom that will inform our energy policies. And I'd like to see new technology coming from this gathering because it's a catalyst. It catalyzed all of those tribes to come together and heal their family.
Yes.
So there's a lot of transformational work that's going on that's long overdue. And then the potential of bringing forth new energy projects from them that will solve these problems.
Wonderful. Brian.
Thinking of prayer, Carolyn, one thing that we say is all my relations. And I just wanted to underscore what we're talking about when we say that. When we offer that as a prayer, it's an acknowledgement of all of these beings that we're talking about, that we are related to.
Yes.
To all of the community of life. You know, in Lakota, it's mitakuye o yasin, right? All my relations. And that's one of those things that we can sit with in our own thoughts, in our own hearts, to look at how that informs us of how to be and what to do in our own lives.
Thank you. And Doris, walking woman.
The preamble to the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Very inspiring words, but I would like to suggest an insert. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all life is sacred and that all life is interrelated. The interconnectedness is what we need to learn. We need to set aside our Western mindset, our colonial conditioning, and begin to see life as sacred, interconnected with all life on planet Earth.
Yes. And I would like to add to that, because we are interconnected, what I believe people don't get is when they destroy the water, they destroy their own life. When they destroy the air, they destroy the air that they breathe, that their children breathe, that the animals breathe. And if we don't get connected with that, understanding it at the heart level, then we're going to demise. The planet won't demise, but we will. And then something new will grow. But as Larry says at the end of each program, and I thank you all for your wisdom, for your heart, for your participation today. And thank you for walking across this country, this great land, and coming back to the Los Angeles area so you can share your wisdom and share it with many generations. And as Larry says, a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its women. And I've changed it to say, a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its women and children.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed.
I stand for that.
So I say thank you all for those of you who have listened. This is the Larry Yates' Is Show on UBN Radio. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week.